Your host Dieter McBusiness joined with the one and only Stat Pat Stateless Patriot. We are California lefties talking to you about national politics. We also have a special guest tonight, Stat Pat, who will be joining us in just a minute. Jola from YouTube,
Hell
very
yeah.
experienced YouTuber. We're excited to talk to him about this, that, and the other thing. And why don't we go ahead and bring him in? Jola, welcome to the party, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are y'all?
I'm good. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself? I understand you're from the Pennsylvania, somewhere in Pennsylvania, like the Philly area or something. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm in Pennsylvania. Pretty much everywhere. Everything other than Philadelphia is the same. So I come from a old coal town. I got into politics because I saw a lot of different things like drug addiction, housing issues, healthcare issues. So growing up, I saw a lot about that. Then I ended up going to college for political science and public policy. Got my master's in public policy. Was making YouTube videos around 2019 to start about Bernie Sanders in the primary. Then also in 2020, I stopped in 2021 for a few years and just started up again for this presidential cycle. But now my channel's seeing some pretty good growth, so we're having a good time. I went from, I definitely say like a Bernie bro, populist, progressive, to more of a social democrat now, I'd probably say.
Sure.
So I'm interested to see, yeah, what your perspectives are, and yeah, ready to talk about the fun news happening in the
Of
past
course.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely. We talk
Insane.
a lot about the dichotomy between progressive and liberal because defining our terms is something that we don't do enough of in public discourse. So we'll definitely get into that. But Stat Pat, why don't you open us up with thoughts on the latest shooter news? I mean, the guy kind of nailed the job, but the follow up didn't go so well. I don't know why he wasn't getting himself out of the country, but
No, of course. I mean, there's still so many like loose ends and open questions surrounding the entire thing. I mean, just off the bat, like zero sympathy whatsoever. Like the United Healthcare CEO is responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of deaths over the past several years. Yeah, that whole company in general is responsible just for so much suffering. The guy who apparently did the hit, yeah, I guess he was just picked up at McDonald's because he was slacking. But it might. I'm not convinced it's him. I guess the surveillance video that showed the guy, the culprit, not long after the shooting took place, showed him with a very different looking eyebrows, very different looking bridge of his nose compared to the guy, this Luigi guy. Um, I'm still
Mangione.
yeah, I'm still waiting for a few like more details to come out. I mean, maybe this guy was an accomplice, maybe this guy's just a fall guy. But regardless, I mean, all of this pales in comparison to just the reaction across the entire internet to this guy. Like to see the left and the right just in pretty much major unification on, this guy basically had it coming. I don't feel any sympathy towards the CEO, and not so much celebrating this guy, but basically everybody just collectively saying like, I mean, I understand why he did it. It's been a very
I
crazy
don't know,
past
man.
four
There's
days.
quite a bit of celebration going on
Oh sure,
online.
no,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
there's quite a bit of women out there saying vigilantes are so hot right now, that kind of thing.
of
Jola, this
course.
guy was caught in your neck of the woods. What are people saying down there?
Yeah, and I'm also part Italian, which is why I'm pretty
Hey,
tan. So we also share that.
Well, that makes two of us.
Yeah, definitely. So if I would have been reacting to this, like I said in 2019, 2020, as more of like a Bernie populist, I'd probably be cheering just like everyone is right now on Twitter and everything. Right
right,
now, I definitely take the tone of what is the best way to message off of this. Pretty much everything
right,
that happens in the world, I'm like, what can we message off of this with?
correct,
So if everyone's gonna say, and I was surprised by the way, because usually I hear people say I don't care about this on Twitter, but I heard, people just around town, we talked about it like we don't really, it's not a big deal. Everyone has a bad experience with health insurance companies. Everyone.
yep,
So using that and just using the general sentiment of that to try and push people in a certain direction for policy is a big deal. But I think that's like the main concern is pushing it in a direction for policy. I don't really care if a bunch of people are going to post about it if we're not going to get progressives in office to really go in and start to do this type of policy to fix this and
right,
hold healthcare companies and well, not healthcare companies, because it's really the insurance companies. They're not healthcare companies.
Yeah.
Those are very distinct things. But yeah, hold insurance companies more accountable. I definitely think it's not good for optics to like make all the memes. We're gonna, enjoy the memes as they come in. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna be more being my little liberal self. I'll definitely be more restrained in my reaction to it. And yeah, it just shows a general discontent with the system. And also
Yes.
when Trump comes in and removes healthcare for even more people,
Right.
if he's able to repeal the ACA, this is what we have to jump on right away. Like, you're angry at this? Here are the people that actually want to solve it. But by the way,
Bingo.
you called this person a socialist before, but how about we actually talk about solutions now?
Yeah, pretty much in full agreement with basically everything you just said. It's like this is something that we actually strive to do on this program as well. It's like messaging, marketing, and utilizing whatever events are currently happening, and how what can we learn from it, and how can we put forth a narrative that people can jump on and become more sympathetic to causes that the left believes in. Um, I mean, we don't even believe that a lot of the causes that the left believes in is even exclusive to the left, because I mean, as you can see, as you mentioned earlier, universal the universal reaction, if you went anywhere on any website, on any page, underneath any post, was just horror stories of people dealing with the healthcare system, losing loved ones, not being denied coverage, and just suffering as a result. This is definitely something that affects every American in one way or another. And this was like this particular company was the worst of the worst when it comes to it.
Yeah.
I think they had like a third
The
of their
worst.
claims.
32%. Yeah.
Were
Denial rate.
exactly
Highest in the industry. The industry average is about 15%. Theirs was at 32. Here,
Yeah.
let's do this really quick because these are some basic bullet points on who this guy was. He is from the corridor originally. We talk a lot about the corridor here, Jola, the corridor being defined as Boston, New York, Philly, Baltimore, and D.C. So he actually, I know a lot of guys like this growing up. Here we go.
Prior criminal history at all. So Commissioner Tisch had just said that on Today's show earlier today. We were hearing some of that reporting. This is someone who is highly intelligent, highly educated, came from a prominent family in the Baltimore area where a lot of people knew him, and also, guys, had a very provocative trail of social media posts.
Overnight in New York, Luigi Mangione was charged with murder in the death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. It comes after a multi-day manhunt led police to Altoona, Pennsylvania, where Mangione was taken into custody. Authorities finding 3 pages of writings which say, in part, frankly, these parasites had it coming, and reference the healthcare industry. A senior law enforcement official briefed on the investigation confirms to NBC News. The writings also include a line that says, "I do apologize for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done," the official said. Now, more background on the suspect's past emerging. His family carving both financial and political footprints in Baltimore, where they own 2 country clubs. And his cousin Nino Mangione is a Republican state legislator.
Thank you all for being here to celebrate Gilman's 116th Founders Day.
Mangione attended the private all-boys Gilman School in Baltimore,
Lacrosse powerhouse.
where he was class valedictorian in 2016. Mangione was also Ivy League educated. The University of Pennsylvania confirming
Yeah,
he
this
earned a
kid was
bachelor's
smart.
degree and a master's in engineering. Investigators say they're doing a complete scrub of Mangione's online posts, including Goodreads, where he quoted this take of the Unabomber: "When all other forms of communication fail, violence is necessary to survive." Mangione calling it interesting. And a post elsewhere of an X-ray of a
Man.
bath. 2 senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News investigators are looking into whether it belongs to Mangione and whether it has anything to do with the crime. His last known address was in Honolulu. A friend from Hawaii told CNN Mangione struggled with back pain.
He confirmed that he had surgery, and he sent me the x-rays. It looked heinous.
Another friend telling the Times Mangione's family said that they had not heard from him in several months after his surgery. A friend from college telling NBC he's shocked.
He really just struck me as another Ivy League student who enjoyed going to frat parties. Good-looking, confident. Nothing particular about him.
And talking with people who are in the suspect's orbit, 2 things became very clear. 1, he was in back pain for a significant period of time. And guys, 2, for a period of perhaps 6 months to a year, Mangione went
Yeah, he
effectively
was
off the
just-
grid. There was outreach from friends and from family, and they did not hear back. But it is pretty apparent that many within his community pretty surprised and stunned, as anyone would be at where we are. Surprised.
Yeah, he was radicalized by pain. Like ultimately, if this is the guy, if we're taking the media narrative, if we're taking everything at face value,
pretty sure
if
this is the guy.
This is the guy.
Pretty sure this is the guy.
I mean, like ultimately, you have so many people in this country that have grievances with this system. Honestly, I'm just surprised that something like this didn't happen a whole hell of a lot sooner. Now, granted, I get scrubbing his social media off the internet because you don't want to create copycats, but you know how many people I see sympathetic to the sentiments of the Unabomber, especially in this day and age. It's like I don't know. I mean, archiving it for I mean, there are already people archiving it, so it's not. You're not going to get this guy completely scrubbed off the internet and what he believed in and what he stood for and everything. And you're not going to erase all the stories of various people that have lost loved ones because they were denied coverage because of the greed of these corporations.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, he's educated and well traveled, and probably did his homework and picked out United Healthcare because they're the worst.
Right.
And then he had on the casings deny, what was it?
Deny, defend, oppose.
Right.
Yeah,
Off of that book. So it's pretty odd. People are all like, oh, wonder what his motive was. It's pretty obvious from the beginning what his motive was to me.
Yeah, he's throwing it back in their faces. Defend the lawsuit, deny coverage, defend the lawsuit, depose the patient. That's
yeah. So I mean,
how these,
we'll see if
insurance
healthcare
companies
becomes an
operate.
issue over the next 4 years. I doubt it. I doubt we'll get anything other than repeals from Trump. It's just a testament to that we should have been talking more about it during the campaign.
No kidding.
Jola, why don't we turn it over to you and talk about the campaign? Because I'd be interested as someone who's moved a little bit away from the Bernie left. What did you think about this election? What can we learn specifically? What can we learn? What could she have done better? What would make mistakes that we can, make sure we don't make next time? Oh, you're on mute.
You're muted, Jola.
Stream. Oh yeah, so 100% everything to me is messaging, and that completely changes the perception of literally everything in politics. Like, you can take down any issue, even what Kamala ran on. So I would prefer a more aggressive campaign. Even if we talked about, for example, I'm not super strict on single payer. There are so many models around the world. We could pick our choice on a system that covers literally everyone, and it'll be a huge improvement. The only reason we rank 13th in healthcare or whatever it is from having so much wealth in America that it makes up for how bad our system is. The fact we're ranked 13th with how much we spend on healthcare is frankly embarrassing. But we have models like Australia where everyone's covered on Medicare, but if you want to buy a private plan, you can still do that and you get a government rebate. That's something that I think would be really palpable to the American people, because they want to have that idea in their mind of, I get to keep my coverage or whatever. But that'll at least get everyone covered as a guarantee in the U.S., which is our biggest, goal. Definitely 100%. But also the Kamala campaign in general, I think she had enough in her campaign, honestly. If she would have kept on pushing aggressive ads on price gouging, and expanding Medicare to cover at-home care, if she would have focused on those issues, and even when talking about Biden, there were very successful programs done under Biden. Biden did more successful protectionism than Trump did with the CHIPS Act and with tariffs on different chips and like electric vehicles. So Biden did more protectionism than Trump. Biden tripled infrastructure spending over Trump. I think he quadrupled manufacturing in general. And Kamala never confidently campaigned on that. And I can understand it in a way, just because in her position, she's never been a politician who's had her own super principled set of values. She did a good job as a politician just being in California and getting elected. But it's not a Bernie Sanders where he comes in and he knows exactly what he's going to run on. So she needs the right people in the room. She needs the right interest group. She needs the right people telling her good plans on how to message. So she's being pulled in 50 different directions. And she's also scared to differentiate from Biden at all on any issue. Then that's a huge messaging issue. And if we're not going to provide narratives on immigration and anything, if we're not going to combat any narratives on trans people or immigration, then the only opinion that's going to be heard is the right wing. And these issues are becoming less popular because Democrats are unwilling to defend them. And I'm just sick of, and they're bad at being politicians. Even from the most liberal institutionalist perspective, they are so bad at defending the institutions of America. I cannot stand hearing Hakeem Jeffries talk, and he'll be doing a one-on-one interview with Brian Tyler Cohen, and he'll be as stiff as a statue and talking well, I'll uphold the decorum of the office. It's bro, we're in a one-on-one call. Just talk to me like I'm a person. And that's straight talk, even sounding like you have straight talk. Even just sounding like you're genuine can go such a long way. And Trump has that really annoying rich guy voice that would be in the movies of the person you're supposed to hate, like the villain voice. But at least he's authentically a bad guy. So that authenticity at least would shine through to people.
Jola, I am just so relieved that we're pretty much in total agreement. You see exactly the issues laid out as we see them, especially when it comes to just these so-called party leaders, these people at the forefront. They're so overcoached, and they're not exactly what you would call principled. They'll just do what they have to do to appease everybody, and you can't do that. It's impossible to please everybody at the same time. The very issues that you bring up about Kamala Harris's campaign are issues that we've brought up multiple times since she lost miserably, and especially when in reference to Hakeem Jeffries, why is this guy the leader of anything? Why is this guy one of the main faces of the party? This party just reeks of inauthenticity and a lack of backbone to defend like the principles that Democratic voters, at the very least, would otherwise vote for the party for. They don't champion the policies that their base overwhelmingly supports, according to poll after poll. I completely share your frustration, and Dieter does as well.
Yeah, and I would just add a little bit of color to what you're talking about with messaging, because I think there's messaging and then there's marketing, and they're related and sometimes they overlap. But like, for example, your sophisticated understanding of the healthcare system and the alternatives that are available if you look at other countries, my slogan would be Medicare for all or something better, so that it's basically agreed upon that you're building upon something that's already established in public discourse. So that it adds a fresh face to it. Like little things like that make a huge difference. And when I saw the Pod Save America episode, which I'm sure you did too, of the Harris team, it was just testing data, no instincts, no creativity, no artistry, and by extension, a messaging platform that reeks of indecisiveness. And one thing we know about the American public, like kind of you just alluded to with Trump's authentic evil, is that at least it is real. At least it is authentic. You know what you're getting with him in terms of the style of leadership, even if he is lying all the time. The tragedy is that we didn't learn our lesson. We had 4 years of Trump, and we didn't learn our lesson. But the big lesson as a country, but the big lesson for the Democratic Party, I think, in terms of strategic messaging, would have been that following the convention, she really should have played more to the base. She really should have done something, had at least one big ticket piece of policy, and also to the vibe of joy was contradictory to the slogan, when we fight, we win. It's like it doesn't really jive. It doesn't, I would have been down for Kamala, the angry auntie or something like that, because that's what people were feeling. We did a episode with these Gen Zers last week, and they were like, what is she talking about with joy? Like, everyone's pissed off. Like, it's insulting. It's downright insulting. Yeah. So the vibes thing could have worked to get our attention, but it's got to segue into conversations about policy, because I feel like on the left you got to offer something. You can't just play defense the whole time. You can't just do I'm not the other guy.
There's a really big point, and definitely feel free to disagree with me as well, because I am definitely going to be coming at it from a more I don't, words don't mean anything anymore. I don't even want to say, but a more institutionalist perspective, I assume, something like that. Whatever word we're going to use now to differentiate progressive from socialist from liberal, because I don't even think liberal makes sense for anything either. No one knows what anything means, and that's the main point. Trump ran on literally zero policies. He legitimately ran on zero policies, other than he just said he's going to lower prices. I'm going to lower prices by 70%. Right. Energy costs are going to come down. But again, the mainstream media, MSNBC and CNN, are viewed as far left to people. CNN is center right. MSNBC is regular left. And if I say that to anyone who even somewhat supports Trump, it's like the world's going to blow up. Like, wow, you think CNN's on the right? It's like, yeah, CNN and MSNBC, they were comparing inflation from 2021 and comparing wage growth since 2023 as equal statistics. And I'm like, why aren't you comparing the wage growth and inflation from the same point? They were misrepresenting this entire inflation. I don't even want to say crisis, but a lot of it was manufactured when it comes to grocery prices. Because our real wages outpaced groceries by far. If we're complaining about what costs are going to go up in, it's healthcare, housing, and childcare. which
Yep.
Kamala should have ran on paid family medical leave. She should have ran
Yes.
on that and also expanding
Yes.
Medicare. She would have been able to corner the sandwich generation completely. That was a good line of messaging. But also, another thing to that, um, it is very true that voters are not reactive to policy unless if you kind of make them. You need to find a way to tie your policy back to something emotional or something they can feel or see, because Biden got zero credit for us having the #1 economic return since COVID. He got zero credit for the CHIPS Act. He got zero credit for the infrastructure bill. He got zero credit for all the clean energy we invested in. He got zero credit for literally anything. In fact, that was used as the #1 point against Biden was the economy. After we objectively, even by just
Yeah.
baseline standards, perform better. I've heard so many voters, by the way, the most annoying voters who say, I vote with my 401k. Ignore every stock market high. And
Oh
it's
my
hard when you're
God.
just dealing with people who don't care about fact and don't care about reality. And people tell me stats don't matter anymore because we can make up stats. We can make stats represent anything. And I ask them, can you find one data set at all that backs any of Trump's beliefs? And they can't find one. So they have to delegitimize all
Yes.
stats, which is the key identifier of every authoritarian authoritarian government. And that's another issue that I'm definitely really, really concerned about. But yeah, overall, if voters are not going to be reactive to policy, we need to make them care in some sense. And I think populism, 100% populism, is dangerous, but you need to lean into populist language and push for, like Bernie wanted, a peaceful reformist revolution, because that's
Right.
really what Bernie wanted. Bernie is a reformist.
Yes.
He's not going to go and support. I mean, right now he seems to be going a little bit harder in the revolutionary direction, to be honest, with him and Elon Musk and a couple of the other populists. But he's always backed Clinton and Biden and Harris, and he's really happy that he backed Biden. Like Bernie talks about Biden like Biden is literally the second coming of FDR, because he probably is the best president since FDR domestically with our domestic policy, and he got hurt for it. So
Yeah, this is something we've brought up before. Like at least when it comes like between Kamala Harris and between Joe Biden was able to maintain a lot of the progressive coalition that Bernie grew. He was able to have that carry over and basically throttle him to victory. So it makes it even more frustrating that not only did the Kamala Harris campaign just completely neglect not just progressive messaging, but campaigning with notable progressives as well. And you bring up a really interesting point about like we do need to make voters care about certain policies and whatnot. But to your point before that, it's hard to do so when the media that's seen as on the left it is not even championing these leftist policy ideas and whatnot. Like when it comes to the Joe Biden White House and whatnot, and not to mention there's just complete misrepresentation of inflation and how it's affecting the economy. Because like you are correct, the economy was actually really good under Joe Biden. The recovery was great, and wages outgrew inflation. The messaging just was not there, and not to mention the mainstream media just didn't do the Biden campaign any favors. If the right believes that like MSNBC and CNN, which are giant powerhouses at which so many people still continue to watch, especially the older you get, they just didn't give them enough credit. So like that perspective for voters just wasn't as prominent as it needed to be. Not to mention, I don't think Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema get bullied nearly enough for watering
No.
down major packages that the Biden administration championed early on to have an even bigger recovery than we had. Like they even had paid family leave, I think, in that first Build Back Better Act. There's just frustration to be had all around.
Cinema's going to be on a corporate board soon. She's dipping out of politics because she knows she has no political future, so she did that.
Yeah.
But like one more thing as well. Looking at the numbers of the view of the economy, Democrats are always between like 60 to 80% optimistic. Whether it's under Barack Obama or under Donald Trump or under Joe Biden, around 60 to 80%. It dipped only during COVID, which is definitely reasonable, of course, to look at the economy in a more dire situation. But Republicans legitimately are not tied to any materialism or material reality at all. Well, they're tied to materialism, but no material reality at all.
Of course,
So
of
you'll see
course.
Republicans 20% of them said the economy was good when Biden was president. 90% said it was good when Trump was president. And now it completely reversed already. The views of the economy already reversed. Democrats are still hovering between that range. There are some Democrats who are partisan, but very few compared to Republicans. And the same with democracy on who trusted this election. 20% of Republicans trusted the 2020 election. 93% trusted this election. When we look at Democrats, 95% trusted the 2020 election and 85% supported this election. So there was a little bit of a swing, but that's a huge swing for Republicans, 90% to 20% if your guy's in office. And then Democrats is only between, again, hovering between a reasonable range. So if we have a voter base who's going to listen to, if they're more afraid of pronouns, it shows that we're in a period where if there is control by people in society, they're blaming the social and cultural elites. They're not blaming the actual elites. If they're mad about trade deals, they're actually mad the money from the trade deals, because we did benefit economically, technically. Yeah. They're mad the money from the trade deals went to all the CEOs. They're mad about that part, but they don't even know it. They think they're mad because they can't do base manufacturing jobs anymore. And those jobs weren't even great jobs. They weren't. No. They were not great. Like a lot of them were not great jobs. But they don't people do not understand what labor practice actually means. We're having DistroKid right now. There's a big story about them union busting and outsourcing all of their work. And that's a growing company, but venture capitalists came in and invested in it. And now all of a sudden we're growing fast, but we're not growing fast enough to return an investment for our venture capitalists. So this entire system is designed in this way, and voters are unable to react to it. So I'm really concerned with if voters are going to hear, oh, you're using pronouns and you support the transgenderism. Yeah. I watched a Lex Friedman episode and I know the secrets to the world now, or Joe Rogan. If voters are going to do that, I don't know how we penetrate that media environment. I don't know how anyone does it, to be honest, because these podcasts are not even political, but the comedy, sports podcast, and just regular, because Joe Rogan is not a funny guy at all. Like, he's a terrible comedian. I love good edgy comedy, but Joe Rogan's literally just dumb. Like, he's not smart. He's not funny. He himself does not understand what a joke is. Right. But yeah, all these avenues are not even directly political, and all we have is like Pod Save America, who are the most boring, bland guys, and they're just talking about just politics. They are not. Pod Save America has done legitimately nothing to expand liberal or democratic politics in our country. Yet they're so renowned. That's not even against them. Like, it's nothing against them. It's against the party for picking and the terrible strategy. And we see who's in charge. I know who's in charge. I interact with them. It is a lot of legacy. It is a lot of I'm someone's daughter or cousin or son. So it's hard for someone like me to break in. Yeah, and we're talking about Donald. And sorry for this extended rant, but we're also talking about Donald Trump, and we're saying, oh, we don't want the Trumps to be a political dynasty. And I'm like, the failure of liberalism, the failure we've had of closing corruption loopholes has led to where we are today. Because all the corruption that allowed the Clintons to be a political dynasty, because Hillary Clinton, if everyone forgot, was First Lady, then Secretary of State, and then was the 100% she's going to be the next person up after Obama came in the 2008 primary, which should have been the first warning, and totally just kicked her out. So we have all these Clintons, we have all these Bushes, we have W. Bush, we have George Bush, we have Jeb Bush. We've had political dynasties. We've had these sources of corruption. But Donald Trump, we finally had people, Elon Musk, we could have had this for years, and even Watergate with Nixon. The only thing that prevented Watergate from not being completely hidden was someone saying no, was Nixon's attorney general, I'm pretty sure, resigning and exposing it, or being unwilling to throw out any documents. So even then, the institutions and decorum were based off of personal decision-making by who was in charge. And now that Americans can't really think about who's really that person, or they can't even tell that Trump is one of the most bland, worst con men of all time. Like, if I was buying a car and someone came out talking like him about me buying a car, he'd be coming out selling people 35% interest rates for a $50,000 car for 10 years, and they won't even know that it's a bad deal. And that scares me as well, because that intuition is gone. But then I see the Democrats and who they're running; they seem plastic and fake as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of problems coming together at once, and now we have billionaires literally just openly running the government. Donald Trump just literally saying, Elon Musk gave me money, now I have to do better policies for electric cars. Now he's going to run the White House, openly saying that. And none of his supporters care at all. None of his supporters said one bad thing about Trump about this entire cabinet. They don't care he's setting the record for the most corrupt and most wealthy cabinet of all time. They only care about Donald Trump's there to own the liberals, and the liberals are mad. That's right. But hopefully that stops. I'm hoping that stops. I hope they snap out of it. My big thing is I hope something crazy does not need to happen for them to snap out of it, but it might need to, because we're entering a system where the corruption in power might be immovable. We might have a situation where with AI and drones and Elon Musk wanting to expand SpaceX drones and facial recognition technology, Trump voters don't know they just voted in what they think communism is. They don't know they just voted in what they think 1984 is. Like they don't know.
Yeah.
The surveillance state you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, the surveillance state that Elon Musk wants to push for that. Like they complain about China and the social credit score, and the facial recognition technology. They can see you wherever you are throughout the day. They don't know that Elon Musk wants to do that because they weren't informed by literally anyone. Because every podcast is either paid off by a foreign government or paid off by the Koch
Yep.
brothers or paid off by
Yep.
whoever, and that's been happening forever. And no one put an end to it. So now these big loopholes are now torn open, and we have
Yeah.
liberals still talking about we need to respect decorum, and it's like no, we need to. Even if you respect decorum, there's a way to do that without being a bland politician who's bad at talking. Just because you're a bad orator, you went to law school and you are bad at talking
right.
in front of a crowd in a convincing manner. That is inexcusable. I don't care what your political ideology is. JD Vance can lie his ass off on stage for 25 hours straight, and people will think it sounds eloquent. But meanwhile, we can't find one Democratic politician who can do the same, and all the ones that can are like actual progressives, so they try to kick them out. And I think AOC is trying to toe that line, but we don't even know where that's going to go.
No, of course.
Well, thinking is, I think there's a okay. So I wanted to go ahead, step out, and then I wanted to watch this Morning Joe piece on just what, because it explains what people think the DNC, how the DNC needs to change. But go ahead, and then we'll get to it.
Of course. Yeah, no, I mean, ultimately, the right-wing propaganda machine is gargantuan, and it has Republican voters in a vice grip. It has conservatives actively voting against their own interests. It's got them completely ignorant of issues that they would otherwise care about. I've said it for years. The Republican Party really does operate on two legs and two legs only: hypocrisy and double standards. If one of those two, pretty much everything that they champion when it comes to policy and when it comes to their narratives and whatnot runs on one of those two things, because it more than like the things that they rally against, corruption and bureaucracy and whatnot. They don't care if it applies to them. They don't care if what they criticize others for, they actively profit from it or receive some sort of benefit out of it. Double standards applies the same way. When it comes to like these podcasts, for example, they don't even have to be political. You're right. All they have to do is be engaging and entertaining enough, and then just sprinkle in just like some random right-wing talking points and whatnot, as if it's like true or based in reality, and that's audience capture right there. The audience is going to take that, run with it, and especially if there's no pushback on any of these podcasts, if it's just like a circle jerk, for lack of a better term, there's no challenging of what's being stated and what's being repeated and just regurgitated, then there's like, that's how you get like, the audience is captured. They're ultimately just propagandized. It's a very, very frustrating situation that we find ourselves in, and it's going to take a very, very long time and a lot of effort, and I don't even know exactly how to start or where to start for this untangling to even begin, because there is billions of dollars circulating in this massive right-wing apparatus, and it's gonna. I fear that it's going to be like this way for quite a while, and it's
well. I mean, we got to sow the seeds now, though. So like now's the time to reflect and learn. Let's see what the mainstream media. So yeah, the only specificity I would add to your assessment of MSNBC's brand, Jola, is that it's baby boomer liberals. It's the older crowd. This is what
survey from Pew
this is how
Research Center
baby
follows
boomer
November's
liberals
election
think.
shows Democrats are currently more pessimistic about their party's future than at any point over the last 8 years. Joining us now, former senior spokesperson and advisor for the Harris campaign, Adrian Elrod, back on the show.
Weird.
Good to have
A
you.
Clinton
I'm
person.
going to talk about somebody that you know because you're from Arkansas. I interviewed Bill Clinton last week, and I will tell you, President Clinton was optimistic. He wasn't sitting there wringing his hands going, oh my God, what do we do? As always, he got right to the heart of the matter. He goes, we got to meet people where they are, right? And he said, I actually said it for him. I said, I was focused on democracy. I was focused on fascist rhetoric. And he said, yeah, people were focused on gas prices and grocery bills. You got to meet people where they are, or they're not going to vote for you. Talk about that, and talk about how Bill Clinton always seems to boil it down to, again, what's the most essential part of the campaign?
Yeah, Joe, first of all, it's great to be back with you and Mika and the whole crew here. I watched the interview. It was such a great discussion between the two of you. And there's a couple of things here. I mean, yes, you're exactly right. We've got to get back to those bread and butter issues, those kitchen table issues, which, by the way, Democrats are the ones who are passing the policies that address those issues. When you look at President Biden's record, 4 major economic bills, can you imagine what our lives would look like right now if he hadn't passed the American Rescue Plan right after COVID? Inflation would have been a record high. But how do we translate what we are doing as Democrats, the policies that we are passing? How do we translate that to how we are going to affect the everyday lives of the American people, lowering those gas prices, lowering food costs, improving schools? There's such a disconnect there in our party, and it's not because of one human being. It's not because of one elected official. It is a collective effort. So I think we've got to get back to being able to effectively communicate about what we are fighting for as Democrats and how that is going to improve the lives of the American people. You and President Clinton had such a great conversation, but he's exactly right. We have to meet people where they are, and if we can kind of get the rub there, where we can talk about what we're fighting for, what we've done, but also what we want to do in the future. Because of course, as we all know, elections are about the future, not the past. I think we can start to get back on the road to recovery. And something else, Joe, I want to mention. When we talk about how some Democrats think, oh gosh, we've got to start all over. We need new leadership. We have to completely revamp where we are as a party. Let me just put this in perspective. In 2004, when John Kerry lost his election as president, we had 44 Democrats in the Senate, and I think we had about minus 28 to 30 seats in the House. I was part of Rahm Emanuel's team when he chaired the DCCC in 2006, where we won back the House, we won back the Senate. Chuck Schumer, of course, his leadership of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. We're in a far better circumstance at this point, right? We are down several seats in the House, and we are only down 3 seats in the Senate. So Democrats are in a much better situation. We picked up some crucial down ballot Senate seats in this election. We narrowed the margins in the House. I think we're actually sitting right where we need to be as Democrats, or whatever Trump and the Republicans can't pass.
Are we?
That is going to be on them because Democrats have no power. So we're not in these dire straits that some Democrats think that we are in this country, but we do have a lot of work to do when it comes to communicating with the voters of this country.
Well, and Adrian, that's another thing. Bill Clinton was optimistic. And I actually heard people who've spoken with Barack Obama. He's not wringing his hands thinking that it's the end of the world, optimistic, because they know that 2 years things can be dramatically different.
Yeah,
Obviously.
All right.
Okay.
So I think that's enough. I think that's probably enough to chew on. But basically, so Jola, so what I'm talking about with the cultural shift, right? Because I think if you're going to reinvigorate an institution, let's get down to values and themes and what's really important. What are in people's heads when they come to work every day at that institution? I think we need to separate leaders from followers in terms of personality type. For example, you talk about the Pod Save America guys, and do they look like competitive people to you? Do they seem like competitors?
They seem like I only watched their one podcast, by the way, maybe 2 total because it was post campaign. And I really don't think that commentary adds anything to my life, and I consume enough political content and make enough. By the way, making
you watched the Harris team?
Yeah, I watched that one. But making content is like frying my brain right now. I hate politics. Like I take call-ins.
I'm right there with you, dude.
It's just like I after having someone explain to me how stats don't matter, I love the world we live in today.
Oh man.
But just in general, they seem like they were old, maybe like frat guys who were also very progressive. That's one description I saw of them. We're not very progressive, but like they were that guy in the friend group. You know what I mean? Like, okay, guys, let's stop talking about women that way. That kind of guy.
Right.
But they don't seem like they're trying to get like. They have no reason to. I mean, no, there's no dominating. It really is the lack of person, and even her in that clip right there, she showed bad messaging because you don't say our GDP went up, our gas prices went. It would have been so much worse. You say. America was number 1 recovering from the pandemic. We were number 1. You take every other country in America, we led because of Joe Biden's policies. And this is what Joe Biden's policy actually did. More manufacturing, opening up more factories. And now we're having the biggest economic upswing of our time. And we're going to get better. We're going to keep fighting for this. We're going to keep on fighting Medicare, or we're going to keep on fighting with Medicare to lower drug costs. And we're going to keep on this trajectory. But she just was like, well, I mean, things would have been a lot worse if Biden didn't do the American Rescue Plan. How many Americans know what the American Rescue Plan is?
Yeah.
Like, you have to give them some type of some more descriptors than that. And I'm sorry to say that, but it is true. Voters are not going to react to that. Voters are not going to listen to that. They don't care. Like, they're going to listen to the dumb pronoun ads instead.
Yeah. Like,
so I think she talks like. I mean, to be. Go ahead, Pat.
The amount of people like post-election that had no idea what a fucking tariff was to begin with, and they're now showing a little bit of buyer's remorse because they're starting to realize, oh shit, I'm gonna have to pay more for imported goods over the next, several years and whatnot. This isn't why I voted for Trump. Yeah, I voted for economic reasons, but now it looks like I'm gonna have to spend more of my paycheck on shit because I didn't bother to fucking learn what a tariff was. Yeah.
Well, the Pennsylvania Trumpers that I talked to so far, I literally had someone say to me 3 days ago that they've read about tariffs, talked to their friend group, they had a conversation about it, and they think it's okay because they trust Trump and it's gonna work. It's gonna work. The prices might be higher for a little bit, but it's gonna work because they trust Trump. And I was like, what does what does gonna work mean to you? Like, what do you think? What do you think gonna work? Do you think America is gonna like Minecraft spawn our ability to get natural resources that we don't have in America? Do you think that our soybean farmers are gonna magically just teleport our soybeans abroad, dodging the reciprocal tariffs?
Yeah.
And it's like, but they don't know what those
No, they don't know what those things are.
Yeah,
That's
so,
a lot
like,
of knowledge that you just
your
displayed.
immediate question to them right afterwards should be like, okay, so explain to me the benefits of imposing a 25% tariff on both Mexico and Canada, which is a violation of Trump's own trade deal that he negotiated with them and passed under his first term, the USMCA. To explain the benefit of a 25% tariff, you know.
You know what's insane too? This like a huge part about this is many of these voters, when they say "haha, soy boy liberal beta," you use pronouns, don't you? What is a woman? They're encouraging. They're really encouraging politicians to lie to them, because if you need a politician to cater to your feelings and emotions, and conservatives are the new social justice warriors. The anti-social justice warriors are way worse than the first rendition of social justice warriors, and at least DEI and all that stuff had a goal to it. At least there was a goal to it that was based off of real things that are real. The anti-SJW ones are literally just emotional and sad, but you want a politician to play towards your emotions. And one big thing that we're using at the local level right now to advocate for policies, we're challenging people at a personal level. Like, why are we hiding from tough conversations? Why are we hiding from actual policies? Why are you concerned about trans bathroom bills when we should be worried about building things? And really challenging people on the basis of personal responsibility and neighborliness. And I've been talking about the Bible a lot, not because I'm saying I'm going to church every Sunday or even that I care that much about any religion and how that functions with the government, because it should not function, but talking about the neighborliness and caring for the poor and the weak around you that Jesus did. But they're essentially saying they want Democrats to lie. Yeah, sure, I'm going to lower gas prices. How? We were in peak energy independence in 2023, but guess what? Drill baby drill, we're just going to lower gas prices. They're just saying politicians lie to me because I'm emotional.
Yes.
So I think the Democratic brand has a problem there when they propose change. Is they have the Aristotle's big three forms of communication: ethos, pathos, and logos. I think that logic, emotion, and then internal credibility, and that's I think the problem with the Democratic Party is their ethos is that they promise transformative change, but they don't deliver. Whether or not that's true, obviously a different story. You have to do your research to know for sure. But that does seem to be the branding problem, whereas the Republicans have the perception of being the party of winners. And the cultural touch point that you're talking about with politics seeping into sports and to other non-political content is the American obsession with competition. And that's what I think that the Democratic Party has been resisting for a really long time, that they need to get over, is that they've taken equality and made it ubiquitous to a fault, whereas they think the leaders should be just like the followers, whereas I'm telling you now there should be, whatever the next generation of leaders are, they should be competitors first. They should hate losing. They should know what it means to learn from your losses so that you perform better next time. Kind of in line with what you're talking about with what we both have been talking about with the performance issues and being, Stat Pat, you said overcoached. I would just say not improperly coached. I would just say they're not coached to be themselves. They're coached to fit into this box that it's just bad acting at the end of the day. And good acting is about truth. Bad acting is about bad lying. One of the things about the immigrant issue, too, to use an example, because I always want to try to ground concepts and examples, fighting back on immigration, because it's become clear to us that immigration is the DNC's blood sacrifice for cultural issues or just catering to the right. Did you ever hear Kamala or any big Democrat political figure in this campaign season say something to the effect of immigrants are good, hardworking people that are law-abiding and want to contribute to society without taking from it and so forth, something like that? No.
Nope.
Right? No.
Of course.
So, it's a pretty easy response. It's a pretty easy response. And, it just takes guts
Yeah.
And that's what Bernie had that the DNC doesn't have. And I got my, Bernie's not perfect, but that was the real tragedy is that the right strategy is staring them in the face. The correct strategy is staring them in the face. They just don't have the guts to pursue it.
Yeah, they're either too coward. They're either too cowardly to defend the people that they are supposed to represent, the people that they're supposed to champion, who they consider part of their base. They're either too cowardly to defend them, or they just don't care to. And I don't know which one is worse, because either way, both of those perspectives from the American public, for people who actually have a shred of empathy in them and see these people as human beings, it looks bad either way. So it's
So so Jola, what are you looking most forward to from Project 2025? Mass deportations, tariffs. I mean, what do you think? Mass deportation seems like the #1 priority, so that's what I think is going to get the most attention right away.
Yeah.
Jailing political enemies. I love that part. I love how Donald Trump wants to bypass environmental regulations, but only for people who can donate or invest or own a corporation worth more than $1 billion. So not only is that anti-environmental, it's also anti-competition too. So like Donald Trump is doing the worst policies for true conservative, free market conservatives, and the worst policies for liberals and progressives. He's doing the worst policies for everything except oligarchy. And that's the fantastic thing about Donald Trump's presidency, is just this total, this idea that it is true. Republicans have had, as far as Republican politicians go, they have had a meritocracy, and a big meritocracy of liars. And they are giving money and power to really good liars. And Democrats don't do that. And in my opinion, we're talking about a candidate for president. We're talking about someone running for U.S. president, most powerful office in the world. And they found their liar. And when I look at Democrats, Barack Obama was sort of like a lucky thing. Like, he just came along.
Yes.
He was a star. He took the stage. We just could tell he had it. He just had it. But we're talking about the LeBron James and Michael Jordan of politics. We're not talking about some random all-star or some random role player. There is no reason you should be a presidential candidate if you cannot be placed in any situation, on any network, on any podcast, and respond to any question and not sound good. You should be that good at politics, especially for the liberals and the left in general, and mostly liberals because the center right and center left is making most of the decisions, if not all. You should be picking. You should take offense to the fact you can't pick someone who's politically effective, not just who you think has decorum. If you're so smart, if you're so intelligent, if you're leading the party, and if Trump voters are so dumb or whatever, why can't you pick a good political messaging strategy? Why can you not pick a good candidate? This person should be an all-star in every arena. There's no excuse. It's literally the candidate for president, especially when they can basically handpick candidates for the primaries. Unless if there's a really unpopular candidate, which, by the way, Bernie getting that close in 2016 should have set off all the alarm bells because he had nothing, and he was able to surge to like 45% in like matter of months against their chosen candidate.
Yeah,
but they refused to pick good candidates, because if they did, imagine even 2012 Joe Biden or 2008 Obama against Trump. It would unironically be a 15 or 20 million vote loss for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It would be such a blowout.
Right.
The only thing I regret about the Trump presidency is that I could not see him run against an actual good politician, because even 40% of Joe Biden in 2020 beat him by 8 million votes or 7 million votes. Imagine what 100% even Joe Biden would have done, because Joe Biden always had that shoot from the hip mentality.
Okay.
He's from Scranton, Pennsylvania, from Delaware, so he always had that appeal where he could talk. He sounds like he's talking straight to you. And he said a lot. He got into a lot of trouble in liberal circles about that. But ironically, that's one of his biggest strengths, especially in 2020. It's just like,
isn't that funny how the DNC just doesn't reward authenticity? It's like, it's starting to make a lot more sense why they fucking hid Tim Walz after the convention. It's like the most popular person in the race according to all the polls, the guy who was a very successful governor who actually ran and championed a lot of like really popular policies. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? It's like, no wonder this is why I'm convinced that like the Democrats don't actually give a fuck about winning, because what happened like after the election and Kamala Harris lost miserably, like all the big name
Yeah.
Democrats and the mainstream media was like, well, Kamala Harris went too far right. Progressives are to blame for the party's loss. It's like, in what fucking world are you living in? You know, is they don't reward authenticity, and I haven't been more convinced of it than this.
Well, they don't
election.
really want people to be individual talent. They
No.
wanted soldiers who are going to do what they're told.
Exactly.
And Pelosi and Pelosi and Schumer seem to be running the party, and Jeffrey seems like it'll be a continuation of that Pelosi culture. So
Yeah,
I'm
and Republicans
of the
will do anything, so they don't have any
Literally.
principles. They'll listen to any marching orders. So
No, as long as they win, they don't care who the horse is, as long as it's a winner.
Yeah, as long as they're serving their donors. Like Trump's cabinet is filled with it's the most corrupt cabinet in the history, whereas it is about to be. You know, giving his first term a run for its money, and everybody who's been named so far who isn't some sort of like media personality or whatever are all mega millionaires worth 8 and 9 plus figures. You know, they're
Yep.
put in there to deliver to their shareholders, to deliver to Wall Street, and deconstruct all these agencies and departments from the inside out. For example, the guy that's going to be running the Department of Energy is a fucking oil tycoon, the head of an energy company. I mean, like, wow, that's going to be so good for green energy and whatnot. It's so frustrating because like the Department of Energy, we could be a world leader when it comes to renewables and green technology and all that. Like instead of outsourcing all the components needed for solar panels or wind farms or whatever to China or India or whoever. It could all be championed here at home in America, but we're still cucked to the oil industry that has such a stranglehold on Washington in general. We don't even bother to think outside the box. We don't even bother to think about clean energy and renewables and whatnot. When it's like there's a whole market there. Like that is potentially millions of jobs that could be here at home making components for these things. And fucking if we're not even if it instead of using it here, why not just make it like an export like all these parts needed to make all these
Yeah, we kind
solar
of missed the
panels and
chance of
whatnot.
that, man. We kind of needed to do that about 20 or 30 years
think
ago.
about it like a capitalist, dude. Like profit
Well,
off
Biden
this
passed it.
industry, you know?
they're going to
No,
build all the
of course.
factories under Trump, though. That's the thing. Trump's going to be able to
He's
take
gonna
credit
take
for every
Get all
single
the
factory
credit.
they
Yeah,
build.
he's going to take all the credit for it. Yeah, so I'm of the opinion in terms of culture, like generational change is where it's at. We need different generation to take over the DNC, and I'm just sick of the baby boomer liberal leadership where it's incrementalism. We still have Clinton people in there talking about triangulation, and it's just we need institutions do come down to individuals on some level, and the people at the top, the Democratic Party seems to be a trickle down culture. You know, you talk about why aren't we getting quality people in these positions, and it's because it's relationship driven. It's not talent driven.
Yeah, these
And
are all
it should be
people that
talent-driven.
contributed heavily to Trump's campaign, or kissed his ass, or defended his ass when the time came down for it. I think he named his attorney general the same lady who was AG in Florida, I believe, and she got him off on one of his cases down there for something or other. I forget the exact details of it, but it's just all corruption.
So, are you a millennial, Jola?
I'm only 24, so
Oh, okay.
Shit. Okay.
I'm young.
Gen Z.
Oh,
here
so
we
you're
go.
Gen Z.
All right.
All right. So,
I'm a Gen Z leader, and
there you
it
go.
really does show that no matter the age, it could be between 20, it could be between 15 and 90. It really does not determine if someone can be a good leader or if they know what they're talking about. To
No,
be honest,
I completely agree. I'm 29, and sometimes I forget that I'm approaching my 30s.
yeah, I just turned 40, so I'm psyched to advocate for my generation to step up. When we were doing the Gen Z podcast last week, we asked them, I said, what do you think of millennials? And he was like, y'all seem broke to me. You got hit with the 2008 housing crisis coming out of college, and all sorts of other things happened with,
We just
the
can't
economy not
can't
really
catch a break.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, and he's like, well, I think it's time for millennials to step up, and I'm convinced he's right because I see the Gen Xers and they're just really into capitalism. because they were out of college in time for the tech boom. So
Yeah.
they got nice benefits out of that before everything went to shit. So, Jola, did you have anything else for us, or we can wrap if you want? Unless you got something, Stat Pat. I'm got my notes covered.
Only other thing I had was I guess the implications of the Syrian government falling.
Yes.
Which has been absolutely insane lately. For years and years, if you like follow Twitter or like the dumb left as they've been meticulously called here and there, there have been so many Assad apologists and whatnot, and there is so much detail of atrocities coming out of like Damascus and whatnot, left over from the Assad regime that these rebel groups are discovering and broadcasting for the world, and it's just like there's so many moving pieces currently, but like all Assad apologists are they're just scum. Let me just throw this out there. But this is opening the door for Israel to invade parts of Syria, and of course Russia loses a bit of their leverage in the region. This has implications for Iran, and it's going to be a continuous.
Yeah, that part of the world just seems like it's always in conflict.
No,
That
yeah,
part
I
of the
mean,
world-
I mean, Syria alone is controlled by like several different factions, but now that like the actual like government has collapsed, there's one major rebel group that's coming in and just basically taking over everything. And
yeah, the guy
it's a
who's the
shit show.
current, the guy who's supplanting Assad is a former Al Qaeda member.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So that's encouraging.
Yeah.
That'll probably go well. Yeah, no, from what I understand, Netanyahu's making the most of a deteriorating situation in Syria.
Of course.
Not to be surprised.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that at the DNC convention we didn't get one Muslim speaker talking about Palestine was pretty damning. But Joel, I don't know if did you want to have comment on that? I did want to ask you one more question.
Yeah, just that's one of the big things that is not brought up in the discussion of U.S. interest, especially with Israel, is situation in Syria and also with Russia as well. Supporting Israel and Ukraine are both huge. I think Ukraine is probably more directly noble, and that's something that's more unanimous agreement.
Yeah.
But both of those are definitely tools to weaken Russia and to weaken. And I think I think a weaker Russia is a good thing.
Sure.
And not having Russia as a threat would be beneficial as well, because then they wouldn't be able to use Russia as a reason to do military conflict already, which is already pretty much there. But yeah, a big part of why the U.S. is so careful to criticize Israel is because they need them for operations such as this. They are a military base that the U.S. doesn't need to take full responsibility for.
Right.
And Palestine, I truly believe that like Biden is kind of like really bad on it. But like as far as other Democrats, they don't care about like anything. Like no one cares about anything.
No.
Trump said he's gonna like Trump wants to just like kill everyone. Obviously. I think Kamala winning would have saved at least maybe 500,000 lives at least.
Yeah.
Possibly. There was a good chance. Now it's a guaranteed chance, though, that everyone there is going to probably die or be displaced to the point of dying, even if it's not directly by an airstrike. So yeah, that was a big, complicated issue for the campaign, and I understand. I understand every single side of it. I don't like that Trump is able to lie so effectively to get like Dearborn to vote for him. But then again, Dearborn is a town that has that banned pride flags. So of course they're going to agree more with an authoritarian right winger than they would just like a liberal left winger, even if it's on an issue of reducing harm. As sad as that always is in Palestine. But I'm just hoping that we can weaken Russia as much as humanly possible. They are winning the propaganda war. They're like the country of, just to get because I usually have a lot of Trumpers on my stream getting really mad. Russia is like the country of toxic masculinity, where they're a weak country, fake economy, terrible military super weak. They just have nukes. And that's why they need to keep talking about nukes, just like someone needs to talk about their big truck or whatever. That's why they threaten How many times have they lowered their nuclear threshold in the past 3 years?
No,
like
of course.
20? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we're gonna do nukes if you like give them weapons. Oh, actually, we're gonna do nukes if you let them use the weapons. Oh, actually, we're gonna do nukes if they're gonna be trained by our troops to use the weapons. Oh, actually, we're gonna use nukes if you use the weapons and shoot the long range missiles if we use those in Russia. Yeah, we're gonna use nukes if you actually put American troops at the border of NATO or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like, at this point,
Yeah, there's
at this point, people
it's-
need to know it's all propaganda. It's all information warfare. And we have Joe Rogan. We have Joe Rogan saying, "Man, Ukraine sucks. Ukraine's pathetic. Ukraine's selfish. How dare they threaten the world with nuclear warfare?" In his mansion in Texas. Like, I cannot imagine more pathetic and weak men than these people. They're the most emotional, and being emotional is fine, but they are the most insecure, weak people in the entire world, and they are taking over. Because largely, we need an opposing message. We need an opposing aggressive message. We need someone who can carry that message, and we just don't have it right now.
I agree.
Well, so my thesis is that conservatives are emotionally underdeveloped human beings, and my decree number 2. So I signpost in my essays, and my favorite decree is number 2. Just because someone looks like an adult doesn't mean they are one. And the reason why these otherizing works, these scapegoat politics, as I call it now, works and has worked for so long is because a lot of these folks don't have relationships with people that are different from them. The immigrants might as well be from Mars, not Mexico. And we've also seen fractionalization within the recent immigrant population here and Latinos in America. I was talking with Stapat about it after the election. The Guatemalan immigrants don't necessarily care about the Mexican immigrants and vice versa, and the Venezuelan immigrants. And I think in the second or third generation immigrant population, it's definitely rubbed off on them this American cultural quality of I got mine, so to hell with you. That's the American mantra for competitiveness since 1980. Is let's get more for us and less for everybody else, and whatever hurts my neighbor helps me.
Ronald Reagan did everything good. Everything went good after Reagan. Everything was going real bad before that. Then Reagan came along and everything got fixed. And now we have like 2 people who own more wealth than the bottom 350 million people. And we're like, competition. And like we're gonna have like one major company. We're not even gonna know what trust busting is because we're gonna be like shot in the head by a drone if we even talk about trust busting.
So that's a huge issue, is breaking up conglomerates. That's the narrative of corporate America since the 80s, is corporate consolidation. And these companies becoming so big and so powerful that they basically get to write their own regulatory rules.
Well, even conservatives who care about trust busting are too scared to be called betas from their friends. They're not going to vote for a Democrat or a communist or whatever other word because they're scared socially, and they're going to adjust their opinions around whatever social views. And also because I try to use very good language with this, and I try to make it seem, with everything I say, people are being taken advantage of by very skilled propagandists. It's not their job to be political experts. They were in high school 30 or 40 years ago. They've been working a 9 to 5 or 4 10s or whatever. It's not their fault they're being manipulated. It's not their fault. But we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to communicate that we are here to help. It's not a bad thing. There are countries doing this. If we need to pay for people to visit other countries, we got to do it. Like Michael Moore taking people to Cuba or whatever, or if we have someone just going to Europe. Just going to Europe in general. And it's just insane that no one knows anything about the world outside of their hometown. And that's the biggest predictor. The biggest predictors of voting for Trump are living in a community that's not diverse at all. And also it's not even gender. It really is just if you live in a diverse culture, that's the number one predictor. It's all culture warfare, and it makes sense. And that's one thing liberals don't know. The concept of white people being afraid of other cultures moving in is a completely normal, innate human reaction that happens in literally every country that has only one of one culture, and they don't have any diversity. It's not easy. It's not going to be an easy process. But the fact we're in a time now, we were supposed to get past that. In 2024, we were not supposed to have people making up stories about diseases being spread by Haitian immigrants and cats and dogs, and people just like believing it. And they're bringing and Haiti being a country that so many I know so many conservative Christian missionaries that have gone there who are responsible for Haiti being 99% Christian, and now they're here filling up the churches, and all these conservatives hid. None of these conservatives who cared about God and spreading the word of God, none of them came back to support these Haitian immigrants who are only believers in God and Jesus because they were told to be believers by missionaries. And now, being in America, they were completely abandoned once it became politically inviable. for conservatives and religious people to support them. And I think that's one of the most disgusting things, and one of the forms of hypocrisy that we definitely need to call out. Yeah, 100%.
Of course, it's so consistent. It's just a through.
There's
line
actually
with so
scripture.
much of
If
it.
you take a look at my essays at some point, I forget which one it is. Maybe I'll send you a link. But there's actually in the New Testament a scripture that alludes to confirmation bias. Ironically enough, it's talking about training ministers and how if you don't do it right, then they're going to find a minister that tells them what they want to hear.
Yep.
And so this whole propaganda business has been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it's going to take bold leadership to break through. That's what I think. I called it the right-wing magic trick, where you're distracting the American public with the culture war. That's what hits mainstream media. That's what soaks up all the attention. And then that distracts the American public with the real agenda, which is the tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations, deregulation, as well as, excessive military spending is kind of a both sides thing. That seems to be the only thing that Democrats and Republicans can agree on is it bumping up military spending. Yeah. But I will say the in terms of, when you go to your channel and stuff, because I do think we need to get the terminology right, or in it's practical to define terms. And so all I would say is like simplifying down the difference between liberal versus progressive now is liberal is incrementalist and progressive is structural change. That's, I think, the two different brands. And it's really neoliberal. The old liberal doesn't really exist like you were talking about, Jola. Yeah. It doesn't really...
But how do you explain it? Let's say you need to explain that difference to a random guy who got out of high school barely, and he's been working in a factory for 30 years, and now he has the literacy level of probably... I'm not going to use grades, but because I feel like that does sound very demeaning, but their literacy level... They cannot read a policy and understand what it actually does.
Right.
How do you explain the difference? That's a big thing for me, is Republicans, they do not care about SOC Dem. They don't care about social liberal. They don't care about liberal socialist. They don't care about democratic socialist or social Dem. They don't care about any of that at all. They care about Republican. They care about us. They care about power. Now we have all these factions and people, going off in different directions, and even within our races, no one can agree on just supporting certain candidates, which I can understand in certain scenarios. But the unification of the parties, and it's just it's really hard as well. Because even the most progressive president, or the closest we got to having a progressive in office, came after 8 years of Obama. Because whenever Donald Trump is in office, every effort is focused on making sure civil rights are not eroded, making sure that our entire institution is not eroded, making sure there is a chance for democracy and for structural or systemic or even incremental change. All of our efforts are going to be making Trump stop and hoping Trump cannot completely turn over our entire world to the billionaire class. Because before, to be honest, it wasn't there were still some public servants. Like Lena Khan is fantastic. And now that's one thing I was going to bring up earlier. Elon Musk making deep state bureaucrat a curse word, when deep state bureaucrats are people who are choosing to work in the public sector. And I'm not talking about the heads. I'm talking about the people actually doing policy, which are the people they actually want to cut from the government. These deep state, hidden, unelected bureaucrats are just people who want to solve these issues. They are great, fantastic people, but they're making it seem super scary because no one's been out of their hometowns. But yeah, I know people who are in these positions, these unelected bureaucrats. They could be working for a private corporation making a lot more money. They could be working for a lobbying firm making a lot more money, but they chose to work in government for a reason. And Elon Musk wants to cut every part of the government that limits corruption and keep every part that benefits him. So he's not going to cut Pentagon spending. He's going to get his own government contracts, but he's going to try to cut the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is one of the dumbest things I've heard in my entire life. It's such a cheap program to run that the cost benefit for that is such in the green for America, not only from them returning money to people, but because they're a threat, it reins in corporations from screwing people over. And that's just something like, what does that mean to people? Like, mass deportations means I'm afraid of that brown person in town. But what does it mean when you say the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau protects consumers? They don't see the effects of that. They're used to having clean water and TVs that don't blow up and meat that isn't spoiled. So like when it's in the media that there's listeria outbreaks, it's a shock to us. And that's because government has worked in these areas, and people don't
Yeah.
understand that. They need to see a big, loud thing. That's why people say 9/11 is worse than COVID, because all the COVID deaths were silent, and 9/11's deaths
Yeah.
were extremely loud and
No, of
traumatic.
course. If I c-
So our brains are just taking over with the fear and anger rather than thinking with any critical thinking skill. And it's
No.
not even a skill. It's just like being able to access that ability in your
I,
head. And yeah.
I completely agree. It's really this attitude of, oh well, if I can't see it, if I don't see it, it's not happening.
Right.
Therefore, it's not real. I don't have a personal anecdote that I can ascribe to this. Therefore, it's not happening everywhere else. It's just it's such a very mentally limited way of looking at the world, and it's so frustrating to see.
So that difference between liberal and progressive that I'm proposing is the genesis or the engine for the rebranding of the Democratic Party and convincing people that it's a new party and convincing people that the Clintons aren't in there anymore running the show, that the Obama people that are still left are there to execute a agenda of big change, as well as, Biden people who stick around too. If it were up to me, I would clean house and not keep any of the people around.
Yeah.
But as the Monday morning quarterback of the election has taken effect, it's become obvious to me that the kind of generational change that I want to see in the DNC is probably going to be a 2 to 6 year process.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But I do believe that younger, more progressive Democrats could rebrand. It's just tough when you think about the leaders, and I mean, maybe we'll finish up with some fun. I mean, we're probably getting Gavin in 4 years, and if not Gavin, then either Gretchen or Wes Moore is my hopeful from Maryland. But those would be the three names based on who was being propped up at the DNC this time. I would say those are the three big names. And it's funny because Gavin kept talking about going on offense in the lead up to this election. And then she said, when we fight, we win. But then she ended up doing events with Liz Cheney. So it's like, I want to see offense. I'm just not convinced that Gavin Newsom is the guy that's going to be going on offense for us. I think a guy from the corridor like Wes Moore would probably be a better choice. But what do you think, Joel? Have you thought about who they're going to shove down our throats in 4 years?
I like Wes Moore a lot. I think that would be the option that makes sense. I don't think Democrats are going to vote for another woman, although I don't think there's any reason not to. That wasn't the issue this election. Although, if Kamala ran the same campaign as a white guy, a straight white guy, I think she probably would have won. Those 200,000 votes between the swing states, the 1% electoral college, or the 1% popular vote win, if she doesn't have to deal with, like, literally, I heard people get so mad about her versus Biden when they would be essentially the same candidate, but they were mad because I heard them say, "Oh, she slept her way to the top." They didn't make any value judgments or policy judgments. She slept her way to the top, and meanwhile, Donald Trump can actually commit sexual assault, and he can brag about it multiple times. He can brag about going for younger women with Jeffrey Epstein, and he's friends with P. Diddy. But somehow Kamala Harris is the one that's in trouble for sleeping right to the top and being friends with P. Diddy partygoers.
Yeah, somehow that's
because they don't care about literally anything.
Yeah,
they don't care about anything.
Yeah, somehow that's not an actual issue if you attribute it to their main guy. It sounds like it's just the fact that she's a woman. God damn it! Yeah,
I think AOC would be able to run an effective campaign. She has a lot of cross appeal. It doesn't intuitively make sense to a lot of people, but when you look at favorability numbers between Republicans who are hardcore Republican, like hate her, but there is this weird thing where some Trump voters will swing over and like her a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's a thing where Obama, the first time running especially, Obama was such a good and direct speaker. And he came so thoroughly with his policies. He sounded so confident. He was almost able to make people forget that he was a black man. And that's one reason people got so mad when he was in office talking about race issues, because they're like, "We didn't vote for this. Why did you talk about being black?" And it's like, Obama. I hear that so often. Obama started racism. That's such a common thing that's said. Obama ruined race relations in America. We were not racist until Barack Obama. But I think AOC has that quality, and she learns too. Like, AOC took her pronouns out of the bio the day of the election. And that's a big push I have for progressive groups. When they do like introductions, every group is like, say your name.
Yeah, I'm not a pronoun guy.
No one wants to say your pronoun every single time they announce themselves.
No.
All you got to say is, like, when you have a new group coming together, introduce yourself, tell us what you want to share about yourself. Just literally tell us what you want to share about yourself. Give the platform. If someone does use pronouns and they need to identify that, sure. But asking every person to do it ad nauseum, no Americans like that. No Americans support it. It creates a wall, because you might have someone that's like slightly on their way to becoming like on your side a little bit, and now their brains are going to shut off. And I'm not blaming at all. I'm not blaming gay people. I'm not blaming trans people. I'm not blaming them at all. I am saying that we're dealing with a population that we need to pamper, and we need to slowly move along, and we need to kind of rock on our cradle a little bit and become their friends and learn how to speak their language to get respect from them. And once we get that respect, then we can start. Once we get their hearts, we can start to change their minds. And that's the big thing. The hearts are first. We have to reach people's hearts. No one cares about policy. No voters ever voted on policy. We elected JFK. We had LBJ be president, be hated for the Civil Rights Act, an entire party shift. Then we had Nixon come back and win, and literally just say the war on drugs is the response to the Civil Rights movement. Then we had Jimmy Carter, who really was the first Joe Biden, who was a pretty good president, but he got blamed for issues out of his control. It's crazy how similar their presidencies ended up turning out. And then we had Ronald Reagan, who was literally an actor, and the actor president, the first ever actor president, was able to come in and create this entire movement and killed all the unions. He, accelerated the war on drugs to the extent where the crime rate went up exponentially. And then we finally got to 1990, and Reagan was washed out of American society a little bit. Even under Bush, that's when crime started to go down consistently for 50 straight years almost. And it's like, or for 30, whatever, 40, I don't even know what year it is. But yeah, crime started to go down after. That's how unsuccessful Reagan was. But yeah, so actor presidents are nothing new. We had WWE stars be governors of multiple states. So we need to understand that about politics, though. I don't want to hear crying about it anymore. This is the arena. This is the game. This is how we need to win it. And if you're good at the game, we need the people who believe in freedom, liberty, and democracy. We need those people to win first. And then we could talk about, and if they also believe in structural change, fantastic. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you, honestly.
All right, I think that's a good place. We'll let our guest have the last word, right? Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. No, that's pretty much it for me. So I guess the only thing what I did want to mention was I have been thinking for a while now about, I don't know if like a show on this channel, or maybe just starting an entirely new channel, but just something that's dedicated to just completely countering all this overly masculine, alpha male, bro mentalities that is just so abundant in all these conservative circles, all these male...
Yeah, if TYT hired us. I mean, basically, right? Like, to what TYT should be.
All these podcasts, all these influencers, all these, like, super wealthy bro types, these chauvinists and
obsessed with money.
Just something that
Gen Z is really obsessed with money. I was seeing
insane.
So the average, so it was like they asked millennials how much money would you need to be like consider yourself wealthy and just comfortable and not have to work, and millennials mostly said like $10 million. And for I think it was Gen Z, it was like $10 million a year.
God, right? No, yeah. So this is definitely prevalent, and it's tapping into. It's tapping into the psychology that is shared amongst a lot of young men, especially within Gen Z and the up and coming Gen Alpha. That it is rooted in their upbringing, which is being surrounded by technology, the advent of social media. It's basically been there since they were very young, and play into that the male loneliness epidemic and whatnot, and just the fact that these generations, even before us millennials, I'm on the cusp of millennial and Gen Z. They're like financially, they're even going to have it worse off than we do, because of rising income inequality and whatnot, and the shape of the economy, just the advent of late stage capitalism as it is and whatnot. So I think.
So what would you feel about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Wrap
No,
up. Step up.
I just think establishing something to counter all these.
Well, hopefully, what I was
ideas
thinking was
and narratives.
somebody would buy MSNBC and then staff it up with guys like Sam Cedar and so forth.
It just depends on who has some money, honestly.
But
if it goes to the right wing before it's too late, then I mean, we're out of
So Jola,
shell
what
at that
about?
point.
I'll finish this with this last question because we're talking about going on offense. We're talking about themes and what
Yes.
kind of messaging would work. What about just straight up generational resentment? What about just straight up like taking what Republicans do to immigrants and saying Democrats are saying we're completely getting all the baby boomers out of the way and it's going to be Gen X and millennials going forward as candidates because the baby boomer generation has failed us?
I think in general, we need to abandon the rules of the past completely.
Yeah.
We need to fund independent media. We need to go on shows, and by we, I mean famous politicians need to go on smaller shows to actually spread influence. We need politicians going on sports shows. They need to go on podcasts, comedy podcasts. Bernie Sanders can do this.
Yes.
Anyone should be able to if you work in politics. It should be simple. It should not all be. It should not all be this loaded thing. And just in general about everything and being offensive, we are in the middle of a wave right now, and it's not crashing yet, but we know it's gonna crash. And just like when you're about to surf on a wave, you need to catch it in the middle. You need to catch the actual flow before it does crash, so you can come out on top. And that's a really dumb metaphor for what we need to do, but people need to prepare now. The Donald Trump boat will be sinking, and we need to be ready for that. We need to be ready to pick up the remnants. The party needs to be strong. When things do fall apart, we need to talk about anti-materialism, caring about our neighbors, caring about things like personal responsibility are completely gone. Conservatives do not care about that anymore. Things like supporting the local fire department are gone from conservative movements. Things like supporting schools are gone from conservative movements. All these things, all these values that conservatives have claimed for generations, they are openly against now. They are hedonistic. They are over-sexualizing women. They are doing all of these things they claimed to hate. And I think we need to bring true value back and really push a message of loving our neighbors. And if someone quotes the Bible or talks about guns, it can't be Kamala Harris randomly talking to Oprah and saying, by the way, I have a Glock, guys. If someone walks in my house, they're getting shot. No one thought that was genuine. No one voted for Kamala because of that statement. Whatever staffer told that to her, read a true crime novel the night before and thought, wow, this guy's hot, and told Kamala to say the same lines. And like they're doing with Luigi right now.
Yeah.
I can't say the name Luigi out loud without feeling like
Luigi Mangione.
I made a joke earlier on Twitter because
Luigi.
Luigi Mangione, which actually it sounds like Luigi's Mansion.
It sounds like the
franchise.
fucking N64 character. Yes.
Yeah, and I made a joke saying breaking: suspected killer Luigi Mangione expected to hire renowned criminal defense attorney Mario Party for legal representation, like Mario Party.
oh, man.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice.
All right. One thing I would have is thank you for the conversation.
Of course.
Yeah. Why don't you plug your stuff?
People on here.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't do much collabs?
And also, oh no, I haven't really. I used to do a couple panels. And yeah, it's really hard because bigger creators, I don't know, they need to have smaller creators on in general. So I mean, it'd be nice if huge channels just gave small channels a chance to do a segment every once in a while.
Yes,
it's not gonna hurt it's not gonna hurt anyone's algorithm to give one video to a small channel. It's not gonna hurt Sam Cedar. It's not gonna hurt David Pacman. It's not gonna hurt anyone. They should be hosting a random new progressive creator every single week on their channel and letting them plug their show after doing a segment. Do a segment for the channel. So should Brian Tyler Cohen. I hear him talking about this all the time. Brian Tyler Cohen talks all this big game about progressive media, and we need more, small media because everyone has their own role to fill, and we need small channels, big channels. We need all these different channels. How about you back up your talk and you invite a new small progressive or liberal or center right channel on every single week, once a week, have a spotlight segment where you give a chance for someone to do whatever their favorite topic is, message on it. You can approve the video, and let them plug their channel. Help everything grow. We can help each other grow at that point, but we need to share the wealth in some way. And the last thing about Trump, my biggest fear about Trump is if they unlock the ultimate authoritarian. I don't know. I don't have a phrasing for this. I probably could look back and find one, but once they unlock the ultimate authoritarian card, where they're able to literally kill people and no one cares, that's the part I'm really scared for. Like, if Trump literally does a political assassination, I don't know if people have an ability to distinguish reality from what's actually, from fiction.
Of course.
And if he decides to do that, I feel like he can talk his way out of literally anything. There's not one thing he has not been able to talk his way out of so far, and no one's holding him to a higher standard to any standard of evidence. So we keep talking over and over again. One of the biggest conversations we have in media in general on the left, mostly liberal media, center left and Democratic establishment media, is we got him finally. We got Trump this time.
Right.
Another legal case, another lawsuit, convicted felon, January 6th. Oh, he's quoting Hitler on stage. They're talking about Puerto Rico at a rally. He's saying he's going to use the military on political opponents. Democrats at every turn are like, we got him this time, guys. We need to get them. Politics right now is not in politics. It's not in the government. All politics right now is being fought on a cultural basis.
Yeah.
We need to win the culture. We need to dominate culture spaces. We need to find out how we refine our approaches. Refine our approaches to better affect these issues. Trans people do not need to be a liability. Immigration does not need to be a liability.
Right.
The real liability are Democratic Party leadership and Democratic candidates who don't have the ability to effectively carry messaging. If you are a great politician, you should be able to carry any message they give you and be effective. And if you don't have that ability, dip out of the race, do not run again, pick someone else who actually does have the ability, give it up to someone new, because you are going to be remembered as the person that kept on losing in one of the easiest political times to win because of your stubbornness. And that is pathetic and unforgiving, and I cannot say anything. Like, I don't even care about the policy at this point. I'm offended that liberals and Democrats and even a lot of progressives, I'm offended that you're at this point in society, law school, rich family, and you suck at politics. How are you so bad at this? How are you so bad? It's offensive to me because I know I'm not going to get a chance on CNN. Maybe someday I will. I don't know. But, like, it's so offensive to me seeing how bad they are. It's like having Bronny James out there starting for the Lakers. He's not starting now, but imagine if he was. That's how it feels watching some of these Democratic politicians out there.
No,
like,
for real.
Like,
well, they get those positions.
For a point.
They get those positions because they do what they're told, and they're not strong people. They don't want strong. The institution itself isn't motivated to have strong leaders in those positions. But I think you're wanting the same change. You're just in the party. You're just not putting the same specificity on it. And it's basically because I think I'm just older and I've seen baby boomer liberals be in charge since 92. And I'm like, enough. Enough. You had your chance. You had 32 goddamn years, and it's time for new leadership. So in terms of all that credibility.
On the bench. Prime Shaq's on the bench, and we're starting Andre Drummond or whoever else. Like, we're starting like.
Hey, you're hitting our chord there, because if you want to understand American culture of competition, you got to understand American sports. And a lot of lefties aren't really into sports. So that's one thing. I was on a conference call with Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report the other day, and I told him, I said, even if you guys don't like sports, pick a sport, pick a team, pick a player. I don't care what it is. Preferably it's a contact sport, but just pay attention and see how they prepare. See how they, learn from losses so they can perform better next time. That's what a winner does. A winner isn't just someone that wins all the time. A winner is someone that approaches the competition in a competitive way, in a smart way. And we're not doing that. I think we need generational change.
You need to be obsessed with
it. Exactly. Yes, like an obsessed artist. It's craftsmanship.
This is something that we've actually wanted to like brand our channel off of a little bit. Just like if the left understood sports a lot more, they would understand the way that American culture operates and whatnot. Because we just see everything as a competition and whatnot. There's a tweet from Vanilla Opinions, who's like has a pretty sizable following on Twitter, and they got dragged for having the take of being on the left means you should hate sports. By the way, and it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? It's like, and they tried to like defend it, saying because someone asked, "Do you want us to lose every election forever?" It's just like, no kidding, and they say that's the wrong question, and it valorizes white institutions and white ways of knowing and being and structuring society in really problematic ways. It's just like because sports promote fascist behavior, they distract the proletariat and the ongoing struggle for socialism, and sports aren't fun to watch. It's just like holy shit. Fuck, yeah. That's
the most valuable form of entertainment in America is live sports. There's
no.
Close.
Oh
There's
yeah, we also
close.
like we can't be problematic with sports, but we can do a whole campaign on how this CEO assassin is the best person to ever exist in history. Now that's not problematic at all. That's not engaging any problematic messaging. But sports are crossing the line. As a leftist, you cannot do that because that's just like. That's I don't know. It's in the leftist anarchist Satanist Bible somewhere.
Yeah. Well, stick around, Jola, because if you're into sports and you're into instilling the culture of competition into the DNC, then you're gonna love us. Yeah. So we appreciate you coming on tonight, man. Why don't you go ahead and finish up with a plug, and then we'll get on out of here.
Final thing I wanted to say.
Sure.
In general. Just in general, just to wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my channel's like growing decently. It's obviously not going to grow fast, so I don't have the ability to transport viewers or anything to anyone. But I've been offering this to pretty much anyone. I have around like 10,000 subs right now. If there's ever any good topic, and you make like a YouTube short about it, and you send it over to me, I will post it on my channel. If you want to just say like check out your channel in it or something like that.
Okay.
And on my shorts, I usually get. On my average for shorts is somewhere between 500 and 2,000 views for YouTube shorts. I mean, so if there's ever anything like that, definitely feel free to shoot it over. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the conversation. Like I said, it's good to have across the country. We're pretty far away in terms of geography, so it's interesting to be able to...
But the seeds we sow now are going to be plants in 4 years because things are going to get so bad. And as we've talked about before, the only time the Democrats win the White House is when it's handed to them on a silver platter of Republican failure. And there's going to be plenty of that in 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm confident. I'm confident. Aside from violence, if as long as violence does not happen on a grand scale, which it might, we might see our first ever since the Tulsa massacre.
Black. That sounds right.
I think we're going to see the first since the Vietnam protests. We're going to see a mass event of the military or police like slaughtering protesters.
Well, they're going to use the military in mass deportations. I'm pretty sure it's going to be related to mass deportations.
But one thing, there's a way to be scared about that, which is very true. If you're in D.C. protesting Trump, he wants to shoot you. We know this, and there's no one to say stop. So if that happens, we need to be ready for it, and hopefully no one dies, obviously. And I know Trumpers that are watching right now are going to be like, this not going to happen, liberal. He just talks. And they don't know anything about what actually the world is. And I always tell them, if you do not understand what's happening in the world at all, follow my channel. We'll talk about it.
Think of it like this. Like Trump keeps on saying that he wants to end birthright citizenship, right? And it's like, okay, well, that would mean that he would be deporting U.S. citizens. He'd just be revoking their citizenship even though they were born here. It's like, well, no, the 14th Amendment that protects people that with birthright citizenship. It's in the Constitution. And it's like, oh really? Okay. Well, think of it like this. Okay, the government seems to be really good at upholding our rights enshrined in the Constitution in those amendments, right? So you really think the 14th Amendment is really going to matter that much?
Yeah. Well, guess what? I don't care about the Constitution anymore. All they gotta say is I don't care about the Constitution. And it's like, no, what are we gonna do? They don't care about the Constitution. But what about the rule of law? The rule of law, guys. I thought we cared about the rule of law here. Oh, you don't care about that either? Oh, wait.
No, they're not. They're not the party. They're not the party of law and order anymore. They never really were. They were just the party of.
Though.
Yeah, I think it will be in the seventh circle of hell in 4 years.
These are weak, multi-level marketing, pyramid scheme, scamming, insecure pieces of like they are literally the weakest, dumbest people of all time. They are going to collapse, but we have to make sure that when they do collapse, they don't effectively they don't invade Mexico or something to stay in power.
It's just remarkable.
Which we're actually talking about. So.
Remarkable that the Democrats managed to lose to them fucking twice. But we'll see.
Yeah, bring it back to reality. It's all propaganda. We have to break the propaganda. We got to break the mind control. The Trump bucket helmets. We got to be able. You gotta be able to fix that.
The Trump bucket.
The Trump bucket helmets.
Yep.
All right. Well, for Jola and Stat Pat, Stateless Patriot, I am Dieter McBusiness, and we are reminding you that you don't get change in America by asking nicely.
Everybody